drink your soup. I will visit you again tomorrow. As for work, let it be. Your health is paramount. He Jin-nan nodded slightly. I appreciate your concern. After Dong Yuru departed, the hospital room fell into silence once more. He Jin-nan leaned against the headboard and closed his eyes. The night had completely enveloped Yushan Mansion. Wen Qingyao had taken a shower and lay in bed, yet sleep eluded her. The excitement of the day and the comfort brought by her phone conversation with He Jin-nan slowly settled into a deeper longing in the stillness of the night. Habitually, she reached out to touch the empty space beside her, feeling a sense of emptiness within. She picked up her phone and opened the chat window with He Jin-nan. Gazing at the ultrasound image, her lips curving involuntarily. After a moment's hesitation, she initiated a video call request. Listening to the series of waiting tones in the earpiece, she instinctively ran her fingers through her hair and adjusted her expression, preparing to present her best self to him. However, the waiting tones abruptly ceased, and the video call was disconnected. Wen Qingyao was momentarily stunned, a flicker of bewilderment crossing her face. In the past, no matter how busy He Jin-nan was, he would always pick up her video request, even if only briefly, to catch a glimpse of her and exchange a few words. He would never directly hang up. Almost the next second, He Jin-nan's message arrived. I'm still in a meeting. It's inconvenient to video call. Wen Qingyao stared at the message. The doubts she had just managed to suppress began to resurface. A meeting? Still in a meeting at this hour? Previously, when he was in a meeting, he would at most pick up to whisper that he was busy and would contact her later, rather than hang up directly. She pursed her lips and replied, still in a meeting at such a late hour? Then you carry on. I just miss you a bit and wanted to see you. After sending the message, she stared at the screen, her heart inexplicably tightening. In the hospital room, He Jin-nan read the text from Wen Qingyao, his jaw tightening. He replied, the project has reached a critical stage. It's an international meeting, and due to the time difference, it can only be held at this hour. I'm sorry, my dear, I miss you too. As soon as this wraps up, I will rush back to see you and the baby. He carefully chose his words, attempting to make the excuse sound more reasonable. When Qingyao looked at the reply, the explanation of an international meeting seemed plausible. His work was of a special nature, and he had indeed had instances of late-night meetings in the past. Her doubts diminished somewhat, replaced by a sense of concern. All right then. Take care of yourself and don't overexert. The baby and I will wait for your return. Ultimately, she chose to believe him or, rather, was willing to believe. He Jin-nan read her response, the tension in his heart easing slightly. Okay, listen to me. Get to bed early. Good night, my dear. Good night, husband. After putting down her phone, Wen Qingyao settled back into bed, yet sleep continued to elude her. The phrase inconvenient for a video call felt like a small thorn, piercing her heart. She turned over, burying her face in He Jin-nan's pillow, inhaling the reassuring scent that lingered. Was he really in a meeting? Chapter 89. He Jin-nan, I give you one last chance. The next day, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the living room. Wen Qingyao sat at the piano, her fingertips unconsciously gliding over the keys, producing a few discordant notes. The sheet music lay open before her, yet she could not focus on a single word. Last night, the doubts that had been forcibly suppressed fermented overnight, not only failing to dissipate but instead entwining around her heart like stubborn vines. What could possibly warrant such elaborate concealment from her? Wen Qingyao's heartbeat quickened, a profound sense of unease gripping her. She abruptly closed the music score, seized her phone, and without further hesitation, dialed He Jinan's number. This time, the call was answered promptly. Baby? He Jinan's voice resonated, sounding as usual, even laced with an intentionally cultivated lightness. Why are you calling at this hour? Is the baby being difficult? No, the baby is very well behaved. Wen Qingyao tightened her grip on the phone, striving to keep her voice calm. I miss you terribly and want to see you. A brief silence lingered on the other end before He Jinan gently declined. Be good. I will return as soon as I finish my work here. You're pregnant. It's not advisable for you to travel. I'm not that fragile, Wen Qingyao insisted, her tone tinged with a hint of coaxing. The doctor has said that after 3 months, things are much more stable. I can take a business class flight. It would be quite convenient. Please, let me see you. No. He Jinan's voice suddenly turned resolute, imbued with an authority she rarely heard. Yao Yao, don't be willful. What if something happens on the road? What am I to do then? Stay at home and don't go anywhere. Wen Qingyao felt her heart sink further. The more he resisted, the deeper her suspicions grew. Yet, she attempted to articulate her thoughts again. There is no yet. He Jinan interrupted, his tone softening but still firm. Wait for me to return, all right? I promise it will be soon. Wen Qingyao understood that pursuing the matter further would yield no results. She swallowed the bitterness in her throat and replied softly, all right, then you take care. Disheartened, she prepared to end the call, her fingers hovering over the hang-up button. Just then, a somewhat indistinct female voice echoed from the receiver, respectful in tone. Mr. He, it's time for your 4. Before she could process the statement, the call was abruptly cut off, leaving only the sound of a busy signal. Wen Qingyao stood frozen, staring at her phone, a tumult of emotions enveloping her, surprise, worry, anxiety, anger, and a sense of grievance. The video call that had been abruptly ended yesterday, his brusque refusal, all the incongruities suddenly coalesced into clarity. Indeed, he was hiding something from her. Why wouldn't he tell her? What had happened to him? Considering He Jinan's tone, it did not seem severe, which provided her some solace. She steadied herself, recalling He Jinju's behavior from yesterday. She must have known as well. Such a significant event as He Jinan being hospitalized had not escaped the grapevine, and it was clear that he had instructed everyone to keep it from her. She would not be able to uncover the truth from anyone. After a moment of silence, she resolved to act. She found the name in her contacts and dialed He Jinan's assistant, Zhao He. The call was answered after a few rings. Zhao He's voice as respectful and professional as ever. Madam, hello? Zhao He, Wen Qingyao stated directly, her tone deliberately maintaining calmness, yet imbued with undeniable authority. Tell me, what has happened to Jinan? Where is he now? There was a noticeable pause on the other end before Zhao He replied, clearly trained yet somewhat hesitant. Madam, Mr. He is merely attending to some urgent business and is temporarily unavailable. Zhao He, Wen Qingyao interrupted, her voice dropping in weight. I just spoke with your president. I heard that it was time for his four. Is this related to work? In a hospital? She articulated each word clearly, laying the facts before him. Tell me the truth. How is his condition? Or, hand the phone to him directly. She could almost envision Zhao He glancing at He Jinan for guidance. She could feel He Jinan nearby. The concealed grievance and fury surged within her once more, and she addressed the phone. Her voice soft yet filled with unprecedented resolve. He Jinan, I know you are listening. No longer relying on Zhao He to relay her words, she spoke directly into the air, as if addressing the man on the other end. I am giving you one last chance to tell me what has transpired. How serious it is. If you choose to continue hiding it from me. She paused, allowing the chilling threat to linger in the air before continuing slowly and clearly, you will bear the consequences. With that, without waiting for any response, she ended the call. The phone screen dimmed, reflecting her slightly reddened, yet resolute eyes. Her chest rose and fell with emotional agitation as she fixated on her phone, as if engaged in a silent confrontation. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. In what felt like an instant, her phone vibrated violently in her palm. The screen flashing with a name. Husband. Wen Qingyao stared at those two words, hesitating to answer immediately. She allowed the ringing to continue for several cycles until, just before she decided to hang up, she swiped to answer and pressed the phone to her ear, remaining silent, awaiting his explanation. He Jinan's voice emanated from the receiver. The earlier feigned lightness completely vanished, replaced by a weary sigh tinged with resignation. Yao Yao. Silence enveloped the line for several seconds. Only the faint sound of He Jinan's breathing could be heard. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts, perhaps reluctantly conceding. Yao Yao, he spoke again. His voice low and slightly hoarse. I'm sorry, it's my fault. Wen Qingyao remained silent, her lips pressed together tightly, striving to suppress the quiver in her voice. She needed his explanation, not just a fleeting apology. He Jinan recognized her expectation, sighed softly, and finally ceased his concealment. I was in a minor car accident. A slight fracture in my left arm, some abrasions and soft tissue contusions. It's not serious, really. The doctor advised that I rest for a while. He seemed to downplay the situation, yet the term fracture made Wen Qingyao's heart ache. I was worried you would be concerned. Your emotions cannot fluctuate too much during your pregnancy, which is why I intended to wait until I was feeling better to tell you. His justification mirrored what he had said to Dong Silly yesterday, yet now it only incited a mix of anger and sorrow within Wen Qingyao. When did the accident occur? She finally asked, her voice taut from the effort of holding back her emotions. The night before last. Wen Qingyao closed her eyes briefly. The night before last. He had tenderly wished her good night over the phone, assuring her that he was well. She hadn't sensed anything amiss. How did the accident happen? She pressed. There was a moment of hesitation on the other end. Fatigue driving. Wen Qingyao was incredulous. She was well aware of He Jinan's self-discipline. While he might work late, he would never endanger himself through fatigue driving. Taking a deep breath, she temporarily set aside all her questions and grievances. The most pressing concern was to ascertain his condition and, above all, to see him. Which hospital are you in? Her voice regained its calmness, yet it bore an undeniable insistence. Yao Yao Yu. He Jinan was interrupted by Wen Qingyao, who called his full name, demanding to know which hospital he was in. Her attitude was resolute, leaving no room for negotiation. He Jinan understood her character well. She was usually gentle, but once her bottom line was crossed, her inherent stubbornness rivaled his own. He sighed again, this time in complete surrender. At Kanha Private Hospital. In the VIP ward on the top floor. He provided the address, quickly adding, don't come by yourself. I will have Zhao He drive to pick you up. Be careful on the way, no rush. I am right here and won't go anywhere. The final words carried an assuring weight, revealing his current helplessness and perhaps a hint of a secret longing to see her. Wen Qingyao responded, her tone revealing no discernible emotion. I'll get ready now. All right. He Jinan's voice softened, imbued with careful comfort. Be safe on the road, I'll be waiting for you. After hanging up, Wen Qingyao stood in place. Dazed for a few seconds. Recovering her senses, she quickly ascended the stairs, changed out of her loungewear, grabbed her bag and phone, and made her way to the living room to wait. She didn't even sit down, standing instead with her gaze fixed outside, anticipating the arrival of the car to take her. Approximately 20 minutes later, Zhao He called, his tone more respectful and cautious than before. Madam, the car has arrived at the door. Okay. Wen Qingyao stepped outside to find a familiar black Rolls-Royce quietly waiting. Zhao He stood by the car, opening the door for her with an almost imperceptible hint of nervousness. Madam. Wen Qingyao glanced at him, said nothing, and bent down to sit in the back seat. The car smoothly made its way to Kangha Private Hospital. Throughout the journey, she silently gazed out the window, while Zhao He glanced at her through the rearview mirror several times, hesitating to speak, ultimately remaining silent. Upon arriving at the quiet VIP ward area on the top floor of the hospital, Zhao He led her to a room and whispered, President He is inside. Wen Qingyao stood before the door, took a deep breath, and pushed it open. The room was a suite, exquisitely decorated like a hotel room. As she walked past the entrance, she immediately spotted He Jinan seated on the hospital bed. He was dressed in a patient gown, his left arm secured with a bandage against his chest, his complexion somewhat pale, with faint dark circles under his eyes, yet he appeared relatively alert. He was clearly waiting for her, his gaze fixed on the door. Their eyes met. He Jinan looked at her, his expression filled with regret, fatigue, and a palpable tension. He parted his lips, about to speak. Yet, Wen Qingyao stepped closer to the bedside, silent and with reddened eyes, gazing intently at him without uttering a word. Her eyes reflected worry, scrutiny, a strength born from enduring hardships, and above all, a silent accusation coupled with a profound sense of relief at finally seeing him in person. Under her unwavering gaze, all prepared explanations and soothing words choked in his throat. He raised his uninjured right hand, attempting to take hers, his voice low and gentle, laced with persuasion. Wife, please don't be angry. I was wrong. Just say something to me, okay? Wen Qingyao did not immediately respond to his outstretched hand, her gaze meticulously roaming over him before settling back on his face. Her tone intentionally distant. Aside from your left arm, is there anywhere else you are injured? He Jinan, relieved that she finally spoke, despite her cold tone, quickly replied. No, really, just some minor scrapes, nothing serious. He moved his suspended left arm slightly. This is just a minor fracture. The doctor said if I rest well, it will heal quickly. He tried to downplay the severity of his injuries with a light tone, once again reaching for her hand that hung by her side. His fingertips gently brushing against her hand. Wen Qingyao's fingers curled slightly, yet she did not immediately withdraw. She raised her eyes to meet his slightly haggard but still handsome face, questioning the greatest mystery in her heart. You are always so cautious. How could you have been driving fatigued? He Jinan, aware that he could not evade this question, gently grasped her hand. Noticing that she did not pull away, he exerted a bit more pressure, drawing her closer to the bedside so that she could sit beside him. He then spoke softly, his voice tinged with a barely perceptible hint of regret and warmth. That day, I finished my work earlier than I anticipated. I looked at the time and thought that if I could catch the last flight, I could return a day early to see you. He paused, his gaze falling on her still flat abdomen, his eyes softening. Perhaps I was a bit anxious on the way. He wanted to come back to see her. For this very reason, he had put himself in danger. Wen Qingyao's heart felt as though it had been struck by something forceful, leaving a bitter ache. The calm and detachment she had feigned began to shatter with each passing moment in the wake of his words. He Jinan observed her expression. Noting that her eyes had turned redder, her lips pressed tightly together in silence, realizing that she was hurting for him. Seizing the moment, he leaned down to kiss her lips, lowering his voice further, filled with allure. Don't worry, it's really not serious. I brought you a gift. I originally wanted to surprise you. He gestured towards a velvet box on the bedside table, his tone imbued with a touch of self-mockery and helplessness, along with a hint of appeasement. Seeing him pale, with his arms suspended, yet still thinking of the gift for her, explaining and coaxing her in a somewhat pitiable tone, caused the emotional dam that Wen Qingyao had been holding up to crumble. All thoughts of calmness, questioning, and anger faded away. Worry, fear, and an overwhelming sense of heartache surged over her, drowning her entirely. Tears fell unexpectedly, large and heavy, streaming down her cheeks, silent yet tumultuous. He Jinan. She choked out his name, her voice fractured and laced with sobs. You scare me to death, do you know that? Do you know how afraid I was? A whole circle of people hiding it from me. I felt like a fool guessing, fearing that something had happened to you. Why did you have to keep it from me? Am I that fragile? Seeing her cry, He Jinan immediately panicked. He wanted to embrace her, but the movement caused him to wince in pain. Wen Qingyao noticed and forgot her own tears in a rush, urgently calling out, don't move. Seizing the opportunity, He Jinan wrapped his uninjured right arm tightly around her waist, pulling her into his embrace. It's my fault, all my fault, he murmured, resting his chin gently on the top of her head, feeling her slight tremors, his heart twisting painfully. He repeatedly whispered, don't cry, my dear wife. Look, I'm perfectly fine. Aren't I? When Qingyao buried her face in the crook of his hospital gown, the warmth of her tears quickly soaking into the fabric. She reached out, wanting to hold him back, yet fearing to touch his injuries, ultimately settling for gently grasping the side of his waist. Her suppressed sobs gradually transformed into soft whimpers of grievance. He leaned and felt the dampness on his shoulder and her careful touches, his heart aching with a mixture of sorrow and tenderness. He tightened his right arm, drawing her closer into his embrace, and lowered his head to kiss her hair, his voice deep and laced with regret. I was wrong. I misjudged the situation, always fearing you would worry and that it would affect you and the baby. He let out a gentle sigh, feeling her trembling form within his arms. When Qingyao lifted her head, her tear-filled eyes gazing at him, her eyelids and nose tinged with red, resembling a rabbit that had suffered a great injustice. She sniffled, her voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what I've been through these past few days. My mind was a tumult of thoughts, imagining the worst. I couldn't eat or sleep properly. Hey Jinan, you scoundrel. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, unable to restrain herself from raising her hand to strike him. Yet as her fist hovered before his chest, she abruptly relaxed her strength, merely resting her palm against him, fearful of causing him pain. This cautious gesture pained He Jinan more than any reprimand. He seized her soft fist, cradling it in his palm, and pressed it gently to his lips. Yes, I am a scoundrel, he admitted, tenderly wiping away the tears on her cheeks. It's my fault that my dear one is so worried and distressed. You may punish me however you wish, just please stop crying, all right? You must promise not to do this again, not to hide things from me, and not to toy with your health. When Qingyao glared at him, trying to appear fierce, yet her reddened eyes and the remnants of tears rendered her only pitiable and adorable. All right, I won't do it again. He Jinan stroked her hair, his voice infused with gentleness and assurance. I promise to never keep anything from you, to tell you everything. Please, don't cry. He repeatedly comforted her, kissing her until her sobs gradually subsided, leaving only the occasional hitch in her breath. When Qingyao slowly raised her eyes to meet his face so near, extending her hand to gently touch his injured arm, her voice still hoarse from crying. Does it still hurt? He Jinan grasped her fingers and kissed them, warmth blooming in his gaze. It hurt a little at first, but seeing you, holding you, has made it cease to ache. He kissed her fingertips lightly, his deep voice carrying a hint of playful persuasion. If my wife were to initiate a kiss, perhaps I would recover even faster. In Chapter 91, Caught Kissing. When Qingyao felt her cheeks flush at his words, her eyes still glistening from tears as she shot him a playful glare. Leaning slightly forward, she closed her eyes and gently pressed her lips against his, intending to pull away immediately. However, just as she was about to retreat, He Jinan's right hand swiftly clasped the back of her neck, deepening the kiss, urgent and profound. When Qingyao, caught off guard, instinctively raised her hand to push him away but suddenly remembered his injury, freezing her hand in midair, unable to exert force, and resigned herself to the embrace, her body trembling slightly. Be careful with your hand, she murmured softly during a brief pause for him to breathe. He Jinan seemed oblivious, greedily capturing her lips until they were both breathless, reluctantly releasing her at last. It's nothing, my dear, he rasped, his voice laced with allure. Holding you is more effective than any painkiller. When Qingyao's cheeks flushed, her breath unsteady, just as she was about to speak, footsteps and muffled voices suddenly echoed from outside the ward. Moments later, the door was gently knocked upon and then opened. Dong Xiling and He Jinju entered. Jinan, how are you feeling today? Mom brought you. Dong Xiling's words halted abruptly upon witnessing the scene in the ward. There stood Wen Qingyao, leaning beside He Jinan's bed, their proximity intimate, her cheeks flushed, lips glistening, and her gaze slightly dazed, while He Jinan, despite his arm being in a sling, wore a relaxed expression, his eyes gazing at her with tenderness that could melt the heart. The atmosphere unmistakably suggested a recent display of intimacy. He Jinju, following her mother, gasped dramatically, playfully winking at Wen Qingyao. Startled, Wen Qingyao sprang back like a cat caught off guard, standing upright, her blush deepening, awkwardly arranging her hair, and softly greeting them. Mom, Zhuju, you are here. He Jinan remained composed, his right hand discreetly clasping Wen Qingyao's hand, his fingers gently teasing her palm. Nodding at his mother and sister, Mom, Zhuju, Dong Xiling observed the interaction between her son and daughter-in-law, a mixture of amusement and helplessness filling her heart. She refrained from further inquiry, approaching the bedside to place the thermos she had brought down, her gaze lingering on He Jinan's injured arm for a moment. Concern evident in her tone. Has the doctor come to check on you? What did they say? They came this morning. The recovery is progressing well. I should continue to rest, He Jinan replied. Dong Xiling nodded, her eyes shifting to the still flushed Wen Qingyao, her tone softening. Yao Yao, when did you arrive? Did you rest well last night? Noticing the faint dark circles under her eyes, she felt a pang of sympathy. You are pregnant and must not overexert yourself. Why not return with Zhuju to rest? A nanny and caretaker can stay here. Wen Qingyao immediately shook her head, tightening her grip on He Jinan's hand. Mom, I am not tired. I want to stay here with him. She looked at He Jinan, her gaze revealing unabashed reliance and determination. I wouldn't be able to sleep at home. My heart wouldn't be at ease. He Jinan sensed the strength in her fingertips, warmth flooding his heart as he addressed his mother. Mom, let her stay. Everything is available here. It's quite convenient. He referred to the fully equipped suite. Dong Xiling observed their intertwined hands and the evident pleading in her son's eyes, understanding that further discussion would be futile. With a sigh, she relented. All right. But remember to eat on time and rest. Don't just focus on taking care of him and forget that you are also pregnant. She then turned to He Jinan. And you, do not tire Yao too much. He Jinan nodded slightly. I understand. He Jinju chimed in cheerfully. Brother, look how much your sister-in-law cares for you. You mustn't scare us like this again, especially her. He Jinan cast a sidelong glance at his sister, saying nothing. Yet his grip on Wen Qingyao's hand tightened a fraction more. Dong Xiling and He Jinju did not linger for long, offering a few more words of advice before taking their leave. Once the door closed, tranquility returned to the ward. Wen Qingyao exhaled softly, glancing at He Jinan, murmuring, It's all your fault. I was so embarrassed just now. He Jinan chuckled softly, pulling her back to sit beside him, encircling her waist with his uninjured right arm, burying his face in her soft neck, inhaling deeply, filled with her scent that gave him immense comfort. Yes, it is my fault. Mom knows, she won't tease you. He lifted his head, gazing intently at her. So, let me make it up to you, and spend quality time with you and the baby. The afternoon sun streamed through the slats of the ward's blinds, casting mottled shadows on the floor. He Jinan reclined on the adjusted hospital bed, a small table set before him, holding a laptop and several documents. His right hand deftly maneuvered the mouse, his expression focused, occasionally picking up a stylus to annotate the electronic files. Wen Qingyao curled up beside him, draped in a delicate cashmere blanket. Perhaps it was the weariness of pregnancy or the emotional upheaval of the morning that had drained her energy, but as she gazed at He Jinan's focused profile, she gradually succumbed to slumber, her breathing gentle and even. After completing a significant merger assessment report, He Jinan rubbed his weary brow and turned to look at the slumbering figure beside him. Noticing Wen Qingyao sleeping soundly, the steely sharpness of his brow softened unconsciously. He gently set down his laptop, picked up his phone, and dimmed the screen brightness. At that moment, the soft ping of a new email from Zhao He resonated in the air. He Jinan opened the email, revealing an electronic invitation to the wedding of Gu Yinqi and Lin Wantong. The celebratory crimson design was accompanied by a note from Zhou Jin. Mr. He, regarding the wedding invitation from the Gu and Lin families, should we handle it as per the usual customs? The so-called customs dictated that invitations from non-core business associates, particularly those entangled in personal matters, were typically declined politely, accompanied by an appropriate gift. He Jinan's calm gaze swept over the names on the invitation, his fingertip lightly tapping the edge of the screen, delaying his response. He turned his head, once again fixating on Wen Qingyao's serene sleeping face, his eyes darkening with thought. Time passed unmeasured until Wen Qingyao's eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly awoke. As she opened her drowsy eyes, they met He Jinan's profound gaze. You're awake? His voice, slightly hoarse from his earlier exertions, held an unexpected tenderness. Wen Qingyao rubbed her eyes and sat up. You haven't rested at all. Just finished. He Jinan closed his laptop, instinctively wrapping his arm around her waist. He gently rested his chin atop her head, remaining silent for a moment before casually stating, Gu Yinqi and Lin Wantong are getting married. They sent an invitation. He felt her body stiffen for the briefest moment in his embrace before she quickly relaxed again. Oh, she replied, her voice devoid of emotion as she buried her face deeper into the crook of his neck, muttering, I won't go. He Jinan's hand, which had been stroking her long hair, hesitated momentarily as he softly asked, You truly do not wish to attend? Perhaps it would be worthwhile to see. Wen Qingyao lifted her head, her eyes clear and composed, tinged with a hint of acceptance. There is nothing left to resolve. I have long since ended things with him. He is merely a figure from my past who once held significance, but will no longer be relevant in my future. She paused, as if recollecting something, her tone laced with self-mockery and nostalgia. The reason I once chose to draw close to him, aside from our shared childhood, was because he was the first to discover the accident and took my parents and me to the hospital. I held gratitude for him in my heart, which made me more forgiving of many things. He Jinan tightened his embrace upon hearing her words. He fell silent for a few seconds, lifting her chin to meet his solemn gaze, his eyes deep and earnest. Yao Yao, listen to me. The first person to discover the accident was me. I was the one who took you and your parents to the hospital and signed the liability papers. Wen Qingyao froze, her pupils constricting in disbelief as she looked at him. He Jinan continued, his voice low and clear. I simply did not know how to tell you, nor how to face you in that capacity. That is why I never let you know. Wen Qingyao stared at him, her mind blank. The person she had silently been grateful to for so many years was not Gu Yinqi, but He Jinan. It was this man, whom she once found cold and difficult to approach, even somewhat intimidating, who had quietly extended his hand during her darkest hour and had silently protected her in the years that followed, in his own way. The sudden revelation left her momentarily speechless, tears welling in her eyes. He Jinan observed the tumult of emotions swelling within her, gently brushing his finger across the corner of her eye, his tone laced with tension and remorse. I am sorry for revealing this only now. Wen Qingyao vigorously shook her head, tears finally cascading down her cheeks, yet her lips endeavored to curve upwards. She tightly embraced his waist, burying her face against his sturdy chest. There is no need for apologies, He Jinan. Thank you for being the one. It has always been you. The gratitude she believed was owed to Gu Yinshi, which had sustained her through difficult times, had never faded. It had merely transformed into a more silent and profound form, deeply rooted in her life, blossoming into a towering tree that now sheltered her. He Jinan felt the dampness of her tears on his shirt and tightened his embrace. When Xingyao lifted her head from his chest, her tear-streaked eyes filled with confusion and a hint of anxiety. She softly inquired, "There is still one thing. Before the wedding, I overheard you telling my grandfather that we had a relationship, and you would take responsibility, but would let me go after 2 years." She paused, observing his expression before cautiously asking, "Was that also a deception to my grandfather?" He Jinan's body tensed imperceptibly. His gaze fell upon her face, which bore a mix of apprehension and curiosity, his eyes swirling with complex emotions. Silence enveloped them for several seconds. Nevertheless, He Jinan did not avert his gaze. He peered deeply into her eyes, his voice grave and sincere, conveying an undeniable seriousness. "Yes, that statement was largely a tactical concession made for your grandfather's benefit." He raised his hand, gently caressing her cheek, continuing to explain, "At that time, your grandfather was furious, believing I had taken advantage of your youth and deceived you. If I did not present myself as merely acting out of obligation, while providing you with an escape route, he would never have consented to this marriage. I had to first alleviate his immediate opposition to have a genuine chance at being with you." His words were blunt, yet revealed a chilling determination to achieve his goals. When Xingyao's heart tightened, He Jinan's thumb lingered at her lips, recalling the moment they registered their marriage. When she had assured him she would not interfere in his private life, likely stemming from this situation. He gazed at her, a mix of trepidation and deeper obsession in his eyes. "I am sorry, my dear. We assumed you would overhear. Which is why you said those responsible words on the day we registered our marriage, correct?" He paused, his voice growing more resolute. "I may choose a different approach, but the outcome will not change. Yao Yao, I must have you. I will eliminate any potential obstacles to this, even if it means uttering some half-truths temporarily." He acknowledged the calculations of that time, revealing his unwavering resolve to possess her. This determination, which may have once caused her pressure and confusion, now transformed into an unsettling affirmation in light of their mutual understanding, especially after learning the truth about the life-saving deed from years ago. He watched as various emotions flickered in her eyes, transitioning from shock to understanding, and then to a touch of complex sorrow. He tightened his embrace around her, closing the distance between them until their noses almost touched, their breaths mingling. However, he emphasized, each word resonating clearly within her heart. "That statement about letting you go was never my true intention. From the moment I decided to have you, I never intended to let go. The so-called 2-year period is merely an excuse to appease the elders, a stepping stone allowing me to keep you by my side." His gaze was fervent, imbued with a deep affection forged through the passage of time. "Did you hear me? Yao Yao, whether it was 2 years ago, 2 years from now, or even 20 years into the future, for a lifetime, I have never considered letting you go. This thought has never wavered." When Xingyao stared at him in a daze, her heart pounding violently in her chest, she observed the unmasked tension and trepidation in his eyes, extending her hand to gently caress his chiseled cheek. Softly, she replied, her voice slightly hoarse from tears yet remarkably clear, "I never intended to leave. I fear the day you no longer need me." He Jinan's eyes brimmed with tenderness and affection as he grasped her hand resting on his face, bringing it to his lips and bestowing a cherished kiss upon it. "Say it again," he insisted. When Xingyao felt her cheeks warm, yet she complied earnestly, "I say, I have never thought of leaving you, He Jinan. I want to stay with you and our baby forever." As soon as the words left her lips, they were enveloped in a deep kiss, entwined in each other. The night quietly descended, the city outside illuminating with myriad lights. The household staff brought in dinner. After the meal, when Xingyao noticed He Jinan's awkward attempt to raise his hand, and immediately realized he found it difficult to wash up. "Shall I help you clean up?" she asked. "The doctor said not to get the wound wet. Let me help you wipe down?" He Jinan raised an eyebrow at her, a teasing smile dancing in his eyes. "Madam, he personally attending to me?" When Xingyao felt her ears heat up under his gaze, forcing herself to remain calm. "What else? Can you manage it yourself?" He Jinan leisurely leaned back against the headboard, extending his uninjured right hand in a gesture of invitation, a smile gracing his lips. "Then I shall trouble my wife." With flushed cheeks, when Xingyao hurried to the bathroom for warm water, wringing out a towel, she carefully helped him remove the top of his hospital gown, revealing his robust upper body. He had an excellent physique, broad shoulders, and a narrow waist, with smooth muscle lines, though the thick bandages wrapping from his left shoulder to his chest were somewhat unsightly. Her movements were gentle and meticulous, avoiding the injury, as she used the warm towel to slowly wipe down his neck, collarbone, chest, arms, and back. Her fingertips occasionally brushed against him, sending shivers down her spine. He Jinan gazed intently at her, observing her focused profile, her flushed cheeks, and those delicate hands diligently tending to him, his throat involuntarily tightening. After cleaning his upper body, when Xingyao helped him into a fresh top, When it came to the lower half, her cheeks were nearly crimson with embarrassment. She averted her gaze, scarcely daring to look at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Would you like to do it yourself? No matter how many times they had been intimate, even now that they were expecting a baby, she still felt shy. He Jin-Nan chuckled softly, deliberately teasing her. With one hand, it's rather inconvenient. Should my wife not assist until the end? When Qing Yao stomped her foot in embarrassment, playfully glaring at him, He Jin-Nan. Seeing her genuine fluster, He Jin-Nan relented, no longer pressing her. He reached out his right hand to accept the freshly wrung warm towel from her. His voice laced with humor. All right, I'll do it myself. We can save the rest for later. Upon hearing this, Wen Qingyao felt her face grow even warmer, hastily turning away and listening to the rustling sounds behind her. Once she gauged the timing was right, she slowly turned back. He Jin-Nan had already tidied himself, lounging against the headboard, gazing at her with satisfaction and tenderness. After tidying everything up, Wen Qingyao completed her own cleansing routine and changed into comfortable pajamas. The caregiver's bed in the hospital room was quite spacious, yet she clutched her pillow, hesitating beside He Jin-Nan's bed. What's wrong? He inquired. She pointed to the empty space next to him. I want to sleep here, is that all right? I promise I won't touch your wound. He Jin-Nan's heart melted at her words. How could he refuse? He shifted inward, lifting a corner of the blanket with his right hand. Come up. We were meant to share a bed. What does it mean for a married couple to sleep apart? Wen Qingyao immediately leaped in like a nimble kitten, lying down beside him, finding a position that wouldn't press on his injury, gently leaning against his uninjured right arm. He Jin-Nan wrapped his right arm around her, resting his chin on the top of her head. Sleep, he murmured softly. When Qingyao nestled in his embrace, finding a more comfortable position, and peacefully closed her eyes. As the night deepened, only the sound of their gentle, intertwined breaths filled the room. The following morning, as the sun had yet to fully penetrate the curtains, a hazy morning light enveloped the hospital room. In her dream, Wen Qingyao felt as though a giant fluffy creature was nudging her. He Jin-Nan lay on his side, propping his head with his uninjured right hand, gently pecking at her lips, eyelids, and cheeks like an insatiable beast, infused with utmost affection. When Qingyao's long eyelashes fluttered a few times before she slowly opened her eyes to find He Jin-Nan's exquisitely handsome face magnified before her. Has my darling awakened? His voice, still tinged with sleep, was particularly alluring. She had just woken up, her voice soft and nasally, snuggling closer to him. He Jin-Nan took the opportunity to hold her tighter, deepening the kiss. When Qingyao quickly sensed the change in his body, her sleepiness vanished almost entirely. Her cheeks flushed as she placed her small hand against his chest, bashfully whispering, Stop, this is a hospital, and you are injured. He Jin-Nan's kiss trailed to her ear, his breaths heavy, his voice laced with restrained desire. It's all right. Your husband is exceptionally gifted and recovering well. Moreover, he paused, a mischievous smile forming on his lips, reminding her, Madam you are already 3 months along, with the first trimester behind her. It was indeed theoretically acceptable to engage in intimacy. When Qingyao remembered this well, but seeing his suspended left arm, she resolutely shook her head. She cupped his face, compelling him to meet her gaze, her eyes shy yet resolutely determined. No, wait until you are discharged, and we can go home. Let us do it then, all right? Her subsequent words were barely audible, but He Jin-Nan understood them clearly. A flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes. Yet more so was the overwhelming desire stirred by her demeanor. He deliberately rubbed his nose against hers, his tone tinged with a hint of grievance and a playful pout. But dear wife, I feel uncomfortable. Could you please take the lead? Absolutely not. When Qingyao's heart softened at his rare display of childlike charm, yet rationality prevailed. Her face flushed, she quickly pecked him on the lips and retreated like a startled rabbit, promising, I will reward you once you are discharged and back home. Reward? He Jin-Nan raised an eyebrow, evidently intrigued by the term, his gaze darkening. What sort of reward? Be specific, Madam I do not accept empty promises. When Qingyao felt like she could sink into the ground, mortified by his question, glaring at him in annoyance, You think of something? It's not possible right now. Observing her flushed face and the facade of composure she attempted to maintain, He Jin-Nan discerned that his intentions for the day would remain unfulfilled. He let out a low chuckle, ceasing his pursuit. Yet he placed a heavy kiss on her lips, imbued with a hint of reprimand. Very well, I shall remember this, Madam When the time comes, you must repay me with interest. The words sent a flutter through Wen Qingyao's heart, as she felt as though she had unwittingly dug a pit for herself. At that moment, the faint sound of a nurse preparing for rounds echoed from outside the door. Feeling as though she had been granted a reprieve, Wen Qingyao hastily extricated herself from his embrace, tidying her tousled hair and nightgown, feigning calmness as she proceeded to wash up. He Jin-Nan watched her retreating figure, a smile lingering at the corners of his mouth. Leaning against the headboard, his gaze fell upon his injured left arm, for the first time wishing fervently for swift recovery. The ensuing days flowed gently within this serene and intimate atmosphere. When Qingyao remained steadfastly by He Jin-Nan's side, he reclined against the headboard, a laptop resting on his lap, his expression focused as he tackled the backlog of work, occasionally furrowing his brow due to discomfort in his left arm. Whenever this occurred, when Qingyao would set aside her sheet music, quietly approach him, adjust his pillow, or offer him a glass of warm water. He would look up at her, the sharpness in his eyes replaced by tenderness, and would seize the opportunity to grasp her wrist, gently drawing her close for a brief kiss. Initially, Wen Qingyao worried about jostling his wound, her body tense with apprehension, but eventually, she relaxed and responded to his soft, lingering kisses, only pushing him away, blushing, when their breaths became slightly erratic. Focus on your work, she chided softly, her fingertips brushing against his slightly weary brow. He Jin chuckled softly, complying by redirecting his attention to the screen, yet his right hand remained intertwined with hers, refusing to let go. Wen Qingyao acquiesced, resuming her reading while leaning against the edge of his bed in tranquil silence. Eventually, the doctor concluded his examination, smiling as he announced, "Your recovery is excellent. You may be discharged today." Upon hearing this, Wen Qingyao's eyes sparkled brightly, though they dimmed again when she caught sight of the enigmatic smile on He Jinnan's lips, and she feigned ignorance. Upon returning to Yushangongwan, the personnel dispatched by his mother had long awaited their arrival, delivering a mountain of baby supplies. From an imported wooden crib and soft cloud blankets to an array of exquisitely adorable garments and bottles, the living room was nearly filled to capacity. This is excessive. Why did mother send so much? Wen Qingyao gazed at the overwhelming assortment and looked helplessly at He Jinnan. He Jinnan effortlessly draped an arm around her shoulders, chuckling. It's not too much. Mother has long anticipated a grandchild, and finally, her hopes can be realized. As soon as he finished speaking, the butler approached, carrying several velvet boxes. Young master, young mistress, these were just sent over from the old residence. They are a token of appreciation for the young mistress. Wen Qingyao opened one to reveal a complete set of exquisite jade jewelry, vibrant and lustrous. Along with a set of ruby adornments, the pigeon egg-sized centerpiece shimmering under the light, dazzling and resplendent. The value was immediately evident. She was taken aback by the unexpected generosity, left speechless. He Jinnan took the jade necklace, draping it before her neck. His gaze was profound, filled with admiration. It suits you perfectly. Accept it, you deserve this. He paused, leaning closer to whisper in her ear, his breath warm against her skin. Carrying our baby makes you the greatest benefactor of the He family. This reward is but a trifle. His words bore a sense of possession and pride, causing Wen Qingyao's cheeks to flush once more. At that moment, his phone rang. He Jinnan glanced at the caller ID and patted her back. I will take this call in the study. You may browse through the items. Keep what you like, and store the rest. Wen Qingyao nodded. All right, you go ahead. His tall figure strode toward the study, his injured left arm still in a sling. Yet it did not diminish his steadiness and commanding presence. He Jinnan remained on the phone for quite some time, and upon returning to the living room, Wen Qingyao was directing the servants to temporarily store some of the baby items. The sunset bathed her in warm golden light as it streamed through the large floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating her as she gently caressed an exceptionally soft baby blanket, her profile radiating an astonishing tenderness. He Jinnan leaned against the doorframe, observing her quietly for a moment. Feeling a deep sense of fulfillment in a corner of his heart, he approached her from behind, enveloping her in his embrace, resting his chin upon the crown of her head. Are you tired? He inquired, his voice low and resonant. Wen Qingyao relaxed against him, shaking her head. Not tired. It just feels quite extraordinary. She took his large hand and placed it on her still flat abdomen. Here, there is truly a little life. He Jinnan's palm was warm, carefully pressing against her. He tightened his embrace, kissing the tip of her ear. Yes, ours. Dinner was meticulously prepared by the nutritionist, light yet rich in nourishment. Afterward, He Jinnan took her for a leisurely stroll in the garden, citing it as beneficial for recovery. As night fell, the moonlight poured down like liquid silver. Upon returning to the bedroom, the atmosphere shifted imperceptibly. The air seemed to be infused with invisible threads, intertwining between them and gradually tightening. Wen Qingyao went to freshen up, and when she emerged in a silk nightgown, He Jinnan was reclining against the headboard, casually scrolling through his tablet. Upon seeing her, he lifted his gaze. His expression was calm, yet it bore an undeniable heat, akin to a turbulent sea beneath a tranquil surface. Wen Qingyao's heartbeat quickened involuntarily. I am going to do my skincare. She nearly fled into the dressing area adjacent to the bathroom. Taking twice as long as usual, she finally emerged at a leisurely pace. The main light in the bedroom was off, leaving only two soft wall lamps by the bed, enveloping the room in an atmosphere of intimate, hazy shadows. He Jinnan remained against the headboard, the tablet set aside, watching her with a composed demeanor reminiscent of a patient hunter awaiting its prey to step into the domain. Wen Qingyao moved to the edge of the bed, lifting the covers to lie down, when her wrist was gently but firmly grasped by a warm and assertive force. Wife, He Jinnan's voice sounded particularly husky and alluring in the nighttime air. Have you forgotten something? Wen Qingyao's cheeks burned, feigning ignorance. What? He Jinnan chuckled softly. The reward you promised me in the hospital? I have been sustaining myself on that thought these past days. His gaze was unrelenting. And Wen Qingyao felt her face flush with heat. She certainly remembered. Yet as the moment approached, her shyness prevailed. Your hand isn't fully healed yet. It's not appropriate. She sought the most plausible excuse. It won't affect anything. He Jin and raised an eyebrow, his tone laced with playful sarcasm and authority. Besides, the main exertion does not come from it. When Qin Yao, rendered speechless by embarrassment, her earlobes nearly crimson, stirred a softness in He Jin Nan's heart. Yet he had no intention of letting her off the hook. He exerted a gentle force, drawing her closer, tilting his head to gaze into her glistening eyes. Lowering his voice in a seductive whisper. How about tonight in front of the mirror in the fitting room? The fitting room? In front of the mirror? The image of the enormous full-length mirror and the potentially humiliating scene it could reflect flashed through in Qing Yao's mind. She shook her head vigorously. Her voice tinged with panic. No, the lighting there is too bright, and it's too embarrassing. Why not? He Jinan inquired leisurely, his fingers gliding along her arm to her shoulder, caressing the delicate strap of her nightgown. There is ample space, and besides, my dear, he paused, his voice becoming huskier. I want to see you. When Qing Yao was rendered weak by his brazen words, her rationality teetering on the edge, she futilely grasped his wandering hand. Please. Just on the bed, all right? He Jinan, however, remained resolute, leaning in, his warm lips brushing against her collarbone, planting a tender kiss. No, his refusal was firm, lifting his head to lock his intense gaze onto hers. Darling, it was you who proposed the reward. Naturally, I shall determine its contents. When Qing Yao found herself at a loss for words, recalling that in a moment of desperation, she had indeed allowed him to decide. Seizing the moment, He Jinan rose, effortlessly lifting her in his uninjured right arm. When Qing Yao gasped softly, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck. He Jinan, your hand. Still strong enough to carry you. He held her securely, striding toward the walk-in closet adjoining the bedroom. The closet's sensor lights illuminated automatically, casting a gentle glow in every corner. The large full-length mirror distinctly reflected their figures. He stood tall and imposing, even with one arm suspended, exuding an unmistakable strength. She nestled safely in his embrace, her cheeks flushed, her eyes shimmering with a mix of shyness and a barely perceptible anticipation. He Jinan gently set her down on the plush carpet before the mirror, enveloping her from behind. His kiss landed on the nape of her neck, heated and fervent. Darling, look at me. He nibbled on her earlobe enticingly. Chapter 95. It is your husband who cherishes you. When He Jinan carried her back to the bedroom, when Qing Yao felt too lethargic even to move her fingers, the images from the mirror still lingered vividly in her mind, especially when he compelled her to look. She had attempted several times to avert her gaze, only to have him grasp her chin and turn her back. His deep, gravelly voice echoed in her ear. Look closely, my dear. It is your husband who cherishes you. Now, as he carefully placed her into the soft bedding, when Qing Yao felt an overwhelming urge to turn her back to him, expressing her dissatisfaction and indignation through action. Yet her body felt heavy, and the thoughts circled her mind, ultimately unacted upon. He Jinan went to the bathroom to wring a warm towel, meticulously helping her to wipe down. When Qing Yao kept her eyes tightly shut, feigning sleep, unwilling to look at him, the towel was warm and damp, gliding over her skin, washing away the stickiness, yet she still harbored a simmering annoyance, especially recalling how he had taken advantage of his physical superiority to utter many indecent words in the fitting room. He Jinan observed her slightly trembling eyelashes, aware of her feigned slumber, yet he chose not to expose her act. He gently completed her wiping, then went to the bathroom to freshen himself before returning to bed. As soon as he lay down, the petite woman beside him quietly and resolutely shifted to the other side, attempting to create distance. A glimmer of amusement crossed He Jinan's eyes as he extended his long arm, effortlessly pulling her back to his side. Do not touch me. When Qing Yao could no longer contain herself, her voice muffled, and still carrying a hint of post-argument hoarseness, lacking any real threat, instead sounding almost like a petulant plea. He Jinan lowered his head, rubbing his chin against her soft hair, pretending to inquire. What is it, darling? When Qing Yao fell silent, attempting to struggle, but he held her too tightly. Are you tired? Or is something bothering you? He continued to tease her, his right hand softly caressing her smooth arm. When Qing Yao abruptly opened her eyes, turning to glare at him, her eyes still slightly red. You are too much. You are forbidden from touching me for the next few days. Or have I gone too far? He Jinan looked at her pouting face with amusement, finding it utterly delightful. Everywhere. When Qing Yao recalled the various moments in front of the mirror, her cheeks flushing anew. I said no, yet you still insisted. Insisted on what? My dear, please clarify. How would I know what you are dissatisfied with if you do not tell me? He leaned closer, their noses nearly touching, their breaths mingling. When Qing Yao felt guilty under his gaze, her confidence waning as she turned away, burying her face into the pillow, unwilling to say another word. Competing with this man in terms of audacity, she would forever be the loser. He Jinan chuckled softly, his chest vibrating and causing her body to tremble slightly in response. He recognized that he had indeed been somewhat indulgent tonight, and had teased her quite harshly. He gathered her more tightly in his embrace, ceasing his playful taunts, and softly said, sleep now. When Qing Yao was indeed exhausted, cradled in his stable hold, coupled with the fatigue from her pregnancy. The lingering discomfort in her heart was swiftly engulfed by overwhelming sleepiness. Before long, her breathing turned even and elongated. He Jinan listened to her steady breaths, cautiously adjusting his position to ensure her comfort before finally closing his eyes. In the following days, Wen Qingyao unilaterally entered a mode of Cold War. It was not a true Cold War, as He Jinan spoke to her, and she would respond, albeit with a lukewarm demeanor, avoiding eye contact whenever possible and saying no more than necessary. At night, she always turned her back to him, curling up on the opposite side of the bed. He Jinan noted her subtle emotions without haste to appease her. He understood her sensitivity and that she needed time to digest the intensity of that night. While her sulking demeanor was amusing to him, one weekend afternoon, as He Jinju arrived home with bags of supplements, she witnessed her older brother, who had once scolded her as a child by grabbing her collar and throwing her out, kneeling before the sofa, carefully holding a bowl and softly coaxing Wen Qingyao to drink Bird's Nest. Just one last spoonful, okay? He Jinan's voice was a softness Wen Qingyao had never heard from him before. It was utterly unbearable, sending chills down her spine. Leaning against a soft pillow, Wen Qingyao didn't even lift her eyelids, merely turning her head slightly to avoid the spoon brought to her lips. He Jinan remained unfazed, patiently adjusting the spoon's direction and leaning in closer. Be obedient. The doctor said you need nourishment. He Jinju stared in disbelief, nearly questioning whether this docile man before her was indeed her brother. She deliberately heightened her footsteps, clearing her throat. Big brother, sister-in-law, I'm here. He Jinan glanced back at her, his expression swiftly returning to its usual composure, yet he continued to hold the bowl steadily. You've arrived? Meanwhile, Wen Qingyao turned to face He Jinju, her face finally breaking into a smile as she struggled to sit upright. Juju, why did you bring so many things? Oh dear sister-in-law, please don't move. He Jinju hurriedly approached, pressing down on her shoulder, while from the corner of her eye, she noticed her brother quickly placing the bowl aside and reaching out to support Wen Qingyao's lower back with a practiced and natural motion. He Jinju almost laughed out loud in her heart, but feigned concern on her face. Sister-in-law, how do you feel? Did my brother upset you? Wen Qingyao cast a sidelong glance at He Jinan and smiled faintly. Not at all. He Jinan stood up, his posture upright, still exuding an air of control over the situation. Yet, when faced with Wen Qingyao's indifferent gaze, his throat moved slightly, and ultimately, he refrained from saying anything. He Jinju engaged in conversation with Wen Qingyao, mostly discussing matters concerning the baby. Although Wen Qingyao spoke little, her words were gentle and polite. During this time, He Jinan attempted to interject several times, either asking if she was thirsty or if she wanted some fruit. Wen Qingyao either shook her head or simply replied that she did not need any. Once, when He Jinan offered her a peeled orange, Wen Qingyao did not take it, instead telling He Jinju, I haven't been in the mood for sour things lately. He Jinan's hand paused in midair for a moment before silently placing the orange on the plate before him. He Jinju struggled to suppress a smile. She realized that her brother had somehow provoked Yao Yao and was thoroughly at a disadvantage in front of her, too timid to show any displeasure. After sitting for a while, He Jinan's phone rang. He glanced at it and softly said to Wen Qingyao, I'm going to the study to take a call. Wen Qingyao responded with a low mm. As soon as He Jinan left, He Jinju leaned closer to Wen Qingyao, lowering her voice with unabashed teasing. Yao Yao, you're quite something. This is the first time I've seen my brother so attentive. His demeanor is so gentle, it's hard to believe. Thinking back to how he used to act all high and mighty in front of me, it's refreshing to see him like this. Wen Qingyao's cheeks flushed slightly, and she shot her a reproachful glance. Don't talk nonsense. What nonsense? He Jinju raised her eyebrows playfully. You didn't see how he looked. Like a large dog waiting eagerly for a response. You ignored him just now, and I could hardly recognize him from that expression. Chapter 96. Wife, are you still upset? As she spoke, she finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. My brother has finally met his match. It's poetic justice, considering how cold and aloof he used to be. Now, someone can keep him in check. Yao Yao, you really are something. Wen Qingyao felt a bit embarrassed by her words. She lowered her gaze, gently caressing her still flat abdomen, a faint smile gracing her lips. He Jinju, noticing the way Wen Qingyao smiled shyly, felt an insatiable curiosity gnawing at her. She drew closer and, in a whisper, pressed on. Come on, tell me. What did my brother do to upset you? I've known him for 30 years and have never seen him so humble. Wen Qingyao's blush deepened, her eyes flickering as she avoided looking at He Jinju. She instinctively pressed her legs together. Her voice was barely audible, her fingers unconsciously tugging at the cushion beneath her. It's nothing, just a small matter. A small matter? He Jinju was not convinced. She scrutinized Wen Qingyao's flustered expression, her gaze flickering between her slightly reddened earlobes and her evasive eyes. Suddenly, an epiphany struck her. Her brother, who appeared composed and restrained, had a strong and possessive nature, especially when faced with his enchanting sister-in-law. Oh, He Jinju elongated her tone, laced with teasing and understanding. I see. Did my brother bully you? She emphasized the word bully, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Wen Qingyao stiffened, like a startled cat whose tail had been stepped on. She quickly raised her head, vehemently denying. No, don't make wild guesses. Her urgent tone was more revealing than any admission. He Jinju, observing her reaction, felt a wave of clarity wash over her, nearly bursting into laughter but quickly suppressing it. She patted Wen Qingyao's hand and, stifling her mirth, said, all right, I won't make wild guesses. I won't ask anymore, is that okay? Yet internally, she was overjoyed, thinking, big brother, you finally have your day? It seems you've ruffled someone's feathers, and now you can only cautiously appease her. At that moment, He Jinan returned from the study after finishing his call. He walked back to the sofa, his gaze immediately landing on Wen Qingyao, keenly noticing the lingering blush on her face, and then caught sight of his sister's barely contained grin, deducing much from the situation. He maintained a calm demeanor as he sat beside Wen Qingyao once more, naturally reaching out to touch her, gently asking, what are you two talking about? However, as his hand approached, Wen Qingyao subtly shifted closer to He Jinju. Avoiding his touch, He Jinan's hand halted in midair, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he composed himself and retracted his hand, his gaze growing slightly darker. He Jinju observed everything, her heart swelling with admiration for her sister-in-law. She quickly stood up, cheerfully declaring, we weren't discussing anything. Just some girl talk. Brother, sister-in-law, it's getting late, so I won't disturb you any longer. Sister-in-law, please rest well. She winked at Wen Qingyao, grabbed her bag, and happily exited the scene. Once He Jinju departed, the living room was left with just the two of them. The atmosphere grew subtly tense. Wen Qingyao felt increasingly uneasy, as He Jinan's presence had never felt so palpable. She reached for the water cup on the coffee table, but just as her fingers grazed it, a large, knuckled hand swiftly took the cup and offered it to her. Drink some warm water, he said in a low voice. Wen Qingyao pressed her lips together but accepted the cup, taking small sips while her long eyelashes cast shadows over her eyes, concealing her emotions. He Jinan quietly observed her, admiring her obedient demeanor as she cradled the cup, stirring something restless within him. Suddenly, he leaned closer, his warm breath brushing against her cheek. Startled by his unexpected proximity, Wen Qingyao's hand trembled, causing the water in the cup to sway. Then, she heard him speak in a tone only they could hear, laced with a hint of helplessness and a greater measure of affection. Wife. It's been several days since I've touched you. Are you still upset? How could she simply let it go? That posture of his would leave her blushing for ages. Later that night, before bed, He Jinan brought out a bottle of pregnancy oil. The doctor had said it was safe to start using it after 3 months to help prevent stretch marks. He sat on the edge of the bed, gazing at her tenderly. Wen Qingyao was leaning against the headboard, engrossed in a parenting book. Upon hearing him, she glanced up briefly and quickly averted her gaze, softly murmuring an acknowledgement before returning to her reading, signaling her desire not to be disturbed. He Jinan was unfazed. He uncapped the bottle, poured some oil into his palms to warm it, and then lifted the edge of her blanket. The cool air touched her skin, and instinctively, Wen Qingyao wanted to curl up, but a warm hand had already settled on her still flat abdomen. His hand was large enough to cover the area completely, and the warmth from the oil created a sticky sensation as he gently rubbed in circular motions, patiently massaging her delicate skin. Wen Qingyao's body stiffened slightly, unable to focus on the words on the page before her. The warmth of his palm permeated her skin, seemingly pressing upon her heart. Fragments of that night inconveniently resurfaced, revealing the mischief of his hands. She forced herself to steady her breath, concealing any signs of her unease. He meticulously applied the lotion to her abdomen. Then his hands subtly ascended to her waist. A shiver coursed through her body, nearly compelling her to gasp. She swiftly pressed down on his wandering hand, finally lifting her gaze to glare at him, her eyes filled with accusation and ire. He responded with an untroubled expression, asserting that the waist also required massage to enhance skin elasticity. His reasoning was grandiose, leaving her momentarily at a loss for words to retort. In frustration, she relinquished her grip and picked up her book, treating him as if he were invisible. The amusement in his eyes deepened as his hands continued their motion, alternating between firm and gentle caresses. Rather than merely applying oil, it felt more like an intimate touch. She bit her lower lip tightly to suppress the soft moan threatening to escape. She felt akin to a fish on a chopping board, tenderly subjected to his gentle torment.